if you go all the way back to the Industrial Revolution, what triggered the Industrial Revolution was access to cheap energy and the development of cheap energy. It started over there in Somerset in England. So England became the founder of the Industrial Revolution because it had cheap energy, which was coal in those days. And what the West is doing as it sees it needs to, the issue of climate change, is pushing up the whole time the cost of energy. That is the cost of doing anything. And you quite rightly say the cost of manufacturing, the cost of living, the cost of heating and cooking and all these basic things, pushing up the cost of transport. These costs are continually going up. And as a consequence, you have productivity flatlining. And if you look at in Australia's case, productivity actually declined in the last year. In the UK's case, it's flatlined. In America's case, we can come back to that, but there is some improvement in productivity. But then America has very cheap energy, and that's maintained a policy of relatively cheap energy. It has much cheaper energy than Australia or Europe. So we powered up the price of energy and invested eye-watering amounts of money in renewables and the energy transition. I know there's an argument for all of this, but the downside to it is that it's economically crippling. And it's okay if you think the most important thing in the world is to stop the world warming, and you think you can stop it warming through this method, and nothing else really matters, then it's the right thing to do. But if you worry about increasing productivity, encouraging investment in Western countries, if you worry about that increased investment being able to fund the various entitlements that have expanded so substantially, then you will try to balance more carefully the investments you're making in green energy and the energy transition. I'm on to all terms. You will try to balance that with your broader economic objectives. But actually, what politicians are doing, it doesn't matter whether they're the centre left or the centre right. They're going around kidding people that through a whole series of government subsidies and government expenditure, we can achieve some sort of renewable energy miracle. Well, it's clearly not true. That's clearly not happening. And that's not happening in any of the Western countries. So the Western economic model, particularly outside of the United States, has stalled. But in the United States, they've been doing much better because energy is so much cheaper there. So you have to examine very carefully what has been happening to the cost of energy. And all at the same time, Western governments have been increasing expenditure on entitlements. You make the point about the NDIS. In Australia, it's going to become our NHS. It's politically a third rail. If you decide to rein in the expenditure on the NDIS, presumably by restricting eligibility, you are inviting a howl of protest.